Welcome back to the Daily Drum on WHUR and Sirius XM Channel 141. This is the Insight segment. I'm Harold Fisher. Yesterday, two teenagers were shot in two separate incidents in D.C. And over the past 2 weeks, a gun goes off inside a third grade classroom in Spotsylvania County. In Charles County, a 9-year-old accidentally discharges a handgun inside an elementary school while getting a paper out of a book bag. 4 Fredericksburg teenagers are now facing murder charges in a mass shooting that left 3 people dead and 3 injured. All of this, a stark reminder about the epidemic of youth and guns. And tonight, we're talking about the apparent fascination and lack of fear some youngsters seem to have with weapons. Those actions, unfortunately, often lead to tragedy. And in fact, guns are the leading cause of death for children and teenagers in the U.S. Joining me to talk about this are Dr. Warries Majid. He is Chief Operating Officer and co-founder of YAME Incorporated. It's a nonprofit organization working to address youth gun violence. And Dr. Alexander Evans, Trauma Medical Director for Howard University Hospital. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining this important conversation.
Thank you.
Let me share a few fast facts before we get into this conversation. Last year, firearm deaths were the leading cause of death for children and teenagers ages 1 to 17. And while overall gun violence incidents saw a decrease last year, gun violence in schools remains a significant concern. Incidents on school grounds increasing by 107%. 55% of deaths among Black kids, 15 to 17, were caused by guns. And the gun homicide rate among Black female teens was 9 times higher than that of their white female counterparts. I want to start with your reaction to the stories of these elementary school students with guns in their book bags. These 2 separate incidents happened literally a week apart. Let me start with you, Dr. Majid. When you heard about these incidents, what were you thinking?
I think the sad part is when we hear about these incidents and we're not shocked. Not shocked in a way where, everything should shut down. And we use all of the power that we have to make sure that we address these issues, wrap our hands around these families, around that community, around that school. We're not doing that. And that's because we are desensitized to everything that's going on. And these young people and the access that they have to the guns, and I'm hoping that's something that we get into today, like what does that look like? And why are they using these guns, which are tools, right? Why do they have access to these tools, number one? And then why aren't they educated on the usage of these tools, right? So those are things that we really want to get into. But as far as when I heard the news, just to be honest with you, it hurts me because I'm a parent first, right? I'm a lover of the creator first, and then I'm a parent. So it really hurts me to hear these things, but unfortunately, it's not enough. And the reaction just is not enough.
Mm-hmm. Obviously, Dr. Evans, you were no stranger to seeing the results of gun violence, but when you hear about these 2 elementary school incidents where no one was physically hurt, but still, what comes to mind for you?
Well, you have to look at things that not just as a physical hurt, but there is a emotional and long-standing occurrence of instability that goes on in a child's mind as they go older. It goes throughout the community. It's like a cancer that grows that makes sure that they don't feel safe at all. There are several books out now where they talk about children who have either experienced violence, for someone else, they were around someone, or they heard a gun go off, and now they're in shock, they're in fear every time they hear a car, muffler crack or something like that. And so it's a longstanding trauma that makes them uneasy over their lifetime. And many of them have to go through counseling and so forth. And unfortunately, many of us as browns and blacks, we don't get the chance to take our children through that type of counseling and desensitization, and really let them know that it's okay to feel fear, but it's okay to know that you can walk down a street and not fear for your life and think that something's going to happen at all costs and all times. So yes, there is the physical manifestations of these guns, but there is that emotional non-physical manifestation that can be pervasive. They may not be able to do well in school. It happens throughout their fear of other individuals. They can't make strong relationships. It goes for a while if we don't look at the bigger picture.
Dr. Majid, in both of these cases with the elementary school students, the reporting has been that both of these boys said that they had no intention of hurting anyone. There hasn't even been the conversation which we are all familiar with, where sometimes young people will say, well, I brought it for protection. There was none of that. It was just that they had it. I remember as a child that you just did not touch guns, whether they were in the home or if you happen to come upon one wherever it may be, no matter what its condition, old and rusted or dropped by someone who may have been trying to perpetrate a crime. It was understood. You don't touch them, you get away, you tell an adult. What has happened? Why isn't that happening now? Or is it happening and just not enough?
Yeah, well, I think these two cases are very different than a lot of the cases that we see in my line of work, right? So that is more talking about individuals, adults who just were not responsible with these firearms, right? And then you're also talking about an education process of individual understanding, like having some type of education when it comes to firearms, right? Even for our young people, I was introduced to firearms by my uncles who are from the country, and it was introduced for the reason, the tool was introduced, and they showed us what the tool was for, right? It was for hunting, it was for protecting. It was not for some of the foolishness that we're starting to see these days with these individuals. So it gets to a point where we need to start saying, like, hey, these young people have access. It's the same thing like the internet and everything else that they have today. If you have access to these things, we need to stop saying, hey, just don't use a gun, don't do this. We need to get to a point where let's start educating them. Like, what is the usage of this tool? What is it for? They need to meet Dr. Evans. We need to go and see when these things happen, whether it's an autopsy or if it's a body out there and the gunshot wounds. They need to see that. They need to hear the cry of the mother or the father or the grandparents when something happens like that. We really need to really start to show the ugly truth around guns, but more so the ugly truth around when we're not being responsible with these guns, because it's just a tool. I can use a hammer, I can use a gun, I can use a Bible, I can use a Quran. It all depends on how I use that tool. If I use it for the right reason, then it's something good comes out of it. If I use it for the wrong reason, something bad comes out of it. And I think we really have to start doing that, as opposed to just saying the gun, because the gun is not the problem. No one on here has ever seen a gun kill anyone, ever, right? It's the person that's using the gun. So I think we need to get back to that part right there.
Dr. Evans, I have a gun license, and 2 or 3 weeks ago, I went to a gun range with one of my good buddies, and he is a gun enthusiast. I'm not necessarily a gun enthusiast, but I do have a license, and I own a small handgun. But we fired 22 caliber. We fired 9mm. We fired 38, and he also had a a 357 Magnum. One of the guns in the cases that we've been discussing was a 357 Magnum. I had never fired one before, but I will say, for anyone who is wholly unfamiliar with that, the comparison between 9mm, which is a lot of people have 9mm handguns. It's almost ubiquitous. But the 357 was a whole different animal. The kick, the power, it was something to really behold. In your work, talk to me about what happens when a body is hit by these bullets, whether it's a 22 9mm, some of the rifles, was it 223s, I believe, and 357s.
Yes. So first of all, any bullet can kill. That's the bottom line. I've unfortunately seen even BBs with hit the right way, into the ear or something like that, and it can go in and kill. So, but you're right. The caliber, i.e., the weight and the density of a bullet, and how powerful it comes out of a gun, and once it hits the body, it then inflicts a certain amount of damage. So, you'll hear a lot of times when the 22, unless it's very close, unless it's, directly in a vital organ, hitting a large vessel, or even if it's shot at the brain, it bounces around the brain and then kills you, so it doesn't have that same destructive impact as you mentioned, the 45 or the Magnum. And so, once that type of destructive power goes in, it's ripping tissue, it's ripping bone, and it's actually demolishing tissue surrounding the actual trajectory. Therefore, when you mentioned the most common one, which is a 9mm, that unfortunately I see that a lot in my work. And those individuals, again, if they're in the thoracic region or the chest wall region, the abdomen, or even in the larger legs near large blood vessels, they're rushed to the operating room to make sure that bullet did not destroy something that's going to be irreversible. Okay. And so, yes, there's a lot of damage. Unfortunately, in our line of work and in the trauma field, we see individuals that die, and we have autopsies, and when we see the autopsy, they'll show the trajectory of the bullet going. I had one the other day going, from the chest, going through the lung, going through the back of the heart, going through the vessels, going through the liver and out the back, even went through the spine. And that was just one bullet, and that was a 9mm. But it was a close. The person was close up to us. I think he was sitting in a car and was shot downwards. So, these things are real and they cause real damage. I was in the military for 6 years, Navy, in Afghanistan. And when I think of uses of these types of instruments, as he mentioned, it's an instrument, it's to defend against the enemy. It's not necessarily to do things like this. When we talk about children, I was looking at statistics and you probably mentioned it before, just locking these things up, just making sure they're secure. If they were all secure, so many times, almost 50% of the deaths that we see, the injuries to children that we see, would disappear. And that's a huge number, as you mentioned in the beginning. So I just wanted to summarize that and say, yes, there's a lot of damage. Different calibers do different things. But, this, especially when it comes to children and those under the age of 18, if we just secure them, we could really put a dent in this.
I have a lot more to ask both of you and to get your insight, but I need to take just a quick break and remind our listeners, don't forget, you can hear this and every edition of the Daily Drum Insight segment via podcast on WHUR.com. The original Quiet Storm with Raheem Devon is next on WHUR. I'm Harold Fisher. This conversation continues on Sirius XM, channel 141 and 96.3 HD2 in just a few seconds. Welcome back to the Daily Drum on Sirius XM, channel 141. I'm Harold Fisher. We continue our conversation about kids and guns. My guests are Dr. Wariz Majid, Chief Operating Officer and co-founder of Yay Me Incorporated, a nonprofit organization working to address youth gun violence, and Dr. Alexander Evans, Trauma Medical Director for Howard University Hospital. Dr. Evans was just saying about securing the guns. Adults who, responsible gun owners means securing the guns. But here's the thing, Dr. Majid, there was not a law, for example, in the state of Maryland until 2002 requiring gun locks. And yet we are seeing this increase in gun violence involving children as we spoke about at the top of the program. So what's going on when you talk to young people who may have either been involved in being perpetrators of gun violence themselves or may have been victims or knew someone? What are they telling you?
I was up at a college not too long ago, about a couple of weeks ago, and I was on a panel with a young lady whose son is heavily involved in some things that have to do with gun violence. And what she said was chilling. She said her son said, "Ma, you don't know who I have to be when I leave here. You don't know who I have to be when I leave this house," right? And basically what he was telling her is, when I go out there, it's almost a jungle. It's like a third world country, right? I was talking about guns being tools earlier. For a lot of our young men, they're tools, but they also become toys, right? The same way as if you had you were with your father or your grandfather, and the tool was a hammer. He showed you how to make a chair or how to build a boat, or if the tool was, your Bible or your Quran, and you went to church studies and things like that. I think something that we forget, Brother Harold, is our young people want to belong, right? At the age that we are right now, we want to belong, right? We may want to belong to a school group, a religious group. For these young people, when they go outside and they have to be something completely different, they have to know how to belong in that group. And a lot of times the toy or the tool that they have been introduced to belong in that group is a gun, right? So for them, they have to learn these guns. So when we're talking about the nine is the little car that you got, right? Or the little bike that you got. And then now you're graduating up to the 357 or to the 45. And that's the motorbike, right? That's the motorcycle. So that's the cycle that our young people are in right now. They're trying to belong to something, and a lot of them really don't want to. So when she said that, and now her son, unfortunately, is he's doing a life sentence for taking someone's life. But he cried out years before and let his mother know, "Ma, I have to be somebody else when I go outside." And that someone else is not that baby that she sees in the house. It's a young man who's outside who has this tool that he thinks is a toy that he thinks he needs to be able to survive in this third world country that we call the District of Columbia. So it's like, it's that serious when we're talking about what guns are, right? What they are to our young people and why they're using them. And they have the accessibility that they have. So there are so many problems within that. But until we realize that these kids are trying to belong, so what we have to do is we need to create them some space to belong to a basketball team, a football team, to a church team, right? To another team, so that they can create their community a little bit different. Because for right now, they're scared, but they know that if they go outside, they have to represent, because they have to change up before they can even come back inside. So that's like an issue that we really want to get into. And I know, Brother Harold, you really want to know what's really going on. So I just wanted to drop that.
And not just me, certainly, but our listeners, because there are people who are concerned. There are mothers and fathers out there who are concerned. There are sisters and brothers out there who are concerned about how young people move from understanding that, or not understanding that firearms are tools versus weapons to do purposeful damage. And Dr. Evans, you were nodding your head at what Dr. Majid was saying.
Yeah, I was just in total agreement. The growing up in certain areas in this country, you're indoctrinated very young to have two sets of beings. You're inside the house, you're your mom's little boy, you're the Christian kid that goes to church every week, sing in the choir. But once you go out on the street, there's a certain interaction you're forced into. And many times there are times when you can resist that, but resisting that for some individuals is not as easy. In our society where many of our homes are broken homes, fathers are not necessarily there, or they don't. The role models are not there. As Dr. Majid mentioned, not just teaching, but being a role model, changing the culture of the community, and giving these individuals, these young men, something else to bond to is a very important aspect of this whole deal.
One of the things I think that is important to talk about is the impact of entertainment and video games. Your thoughts about that, Dr. Majid?
No question. We speak about this in some of our classes, right? If you buy a game, if you look at a movie and it says PG-13, for some, I don't know how, but we keep forgetting what PG means, parental guidance, right? Doesn't that mean that my 12 or 13-year-old cannot watch this movie? Doesn't that mean that they can't play the game? It means that when they're playing the game, I need to be talking to them. I believe I said this on your last show. I had my nephew and my son at my house. They were playing this game, Grand Theft Auto, right? They love the game. So I come in, I'm sitting with them. Someone got shot. I asked them, okay, was that funny? They ran over an old lady. Was that funny? They had this gun. I said, oh, I know about that gun right there. That actually killed someone. So every interaction within the game, I was explaining to them what was going on in real life. Also, that when you get killed in the game, you get to play it again, as long as your power's on, right? Eventually, what my son told me was like, okay, thank you, Dad. You ruined it for me. In other words, I don't even want to play the game no more. It's not fun anymore.
Wow.
Right? But that is the job that we have. Dr. Evans said something that we don't talk about. Oh, man, what happened?
Go ahead. We can hear you.
Okay, I'm sorry. I don't know what happened with my camera. But one of the things that Dr. Evans said was about the fathers. And the truth of the matter is we are looking at the fatherless generation. But we're not just looking at the fatherless generation. We're also looking at the generation where the mothers and the grandfathers and the grandmothers are gone, right? So at least when I was young, growing up in the 80s, 90s, you may not, fatherless generation, it's not nothing new in the Black community. But something that is new is not having a strong parental figure in the household. And we're now getting to a point where that's what's happening. So when you see these things that are happening in our community, it's because it's the fatherless generation, but it's also parental guidance is gone. It's not around anymore. And that's one of the problems that we have, whether it's music or sports figures or whatever leaders, because they're all stars, and back in the day, we all know what is a star. A star is something that guides you to where you're trying to go. So it's these games, these actors, all these individuals, they're all guiding our young people, and there's no parental guidance. So you have a third parent in your household, and they're the more dominant parent. So that's what we need to get back to more than anything.
Dr. Evans, talk to me about your thoughts regarding the finality of death. Certainly, you've had gunshot victims in the emergency room who did not survive. But have you had any conversations with perhaps siblings who may have lost another sibling in the emergency room or shortly after that about the finality of death? Do you believe there's an understanding of that?
Unfortunately, I really do not think that the general population fully grasps, and I'm talking about the younger ones, like 14, 15, 16, fully grasp the awareness of death and its impact. They can be manipulated. I use that term manipulated, or hyped into an arena where, you can do it. Go get this guy. You be all right. You do go. It's like you belong to us. So because of that, you got to go fight and be a part of this negative, outcome. And, I've unfortunately, even not too long ago, I'd say maybe about 5-6 months ago, have these kids come in, a young man come in, 16-year-old shot in the chest, and just could not, everything we did, we could not revive him. And unfortunately, we found out that the bullet went, just beside his heart, but through one of the large vessels near his heart, and he just bled out in his chest. And no matter what we did, we couldn't revive him. And from that instant, you saw the sister just wailing, and I think she was about the same age, maybe a little older, and the family's on the floor just distraught. And I didn't get a chance to delve into how this all occurred, but you start thinking like, if you have your family members and your friends, etc., that are involved in this type, where do you think this is going to end? It's going to end when someone getting hurt or killed. And I think that the realization of this fact is not really imprinted on the brains of these young individuals. So we have programs here at Howard where we take in, high school students, and we talk to them about, we will bring them through the emergency room, and we'll talk to them about the violence and so forth. We try to do interventions, but that's just a small program. And there's so many students. Now, not all, I think we have like 16 or 17 that rotate through. So we're talking about hundreds and hundreds of students that are young people, individuals that don't get to see that. So, that's why I say it should be a pervasive effort throughout entire communities, that not just one area, not just Dr. Majid and his organization, not just Howard, but like it should be something that's stabilized, that we change the culture so that we understand that these video games, these movies, etc., they're just that. They're for entertainment, but they're not real. Once it happens to you, it's permanent. And as I mentioned in the beginning of this talk, it's not just the person that's injured, it's the person who survives. Even when you're injured or dies, it's the community around, the trauma that's pervasive through that affects so many people.
The same question to you, Dr. Majid, about young people and trying to comprehend the finality of death. What do they say to you when they lose a friend to gun violence?
So, we have, I'm going to say, 3 different calibers of individuals. We have individuals who have been really, when I say born into this type of culture, I mean from day one. And, these individuals probably have a father or uncle or someone in their family who's probably murdered before they even were born, right? And then they see that from a young age. So for them, it's really 18, they say life expectancy of 18. And they're like, hey, that's why we celebrate our birthday the way we celebrate it, right? Then you have individuals who they have individuals in their families who probably come from that first level, and they're gravitating to it, but they really don't see it. And then we have this third level, which is really, really getting to me. These are the individuals who they don't know about it at all. They're reading about it. They're playing the games. They're listening to the music. So it's 3 different levels. For those individuals on that third level, they can probably be what they used to call scared straight. Remember those programs?
Yes.
That can work for them, right? That second level, that could possibly work for them, but they really need to see it, though. It needs to be a little bit more than just a scared straight program. That first level, that's the individuals who are really setting the bar. But they don't, if they were in this at the second or third level, they would love the lifestyle that they had, right? They didn't choose their lifestyle. That second and third level, they're starting to choose this lifestyle. So what we have to do is we need to get to that first level. We need as many Harold Fishers and Dr. Evans and Maurice Majids out there to mentor, to show them a different way, because they will accept that and they will love to run with that, right? And what happens is they set the bar for that second and third level, right? And because even between the music, the games, the the individuals that are just out and about and doing some of the craziest things that you can imagine, believe it or not, most of those individuals in that first level, they would love to have a different path. They would love it. And they are natural born leaders. They are survivors. They have found a way. And unfortunately, they just took lemons and made lemonade. And everybody wants to taste that lemonade until they taste it and realize there's no sugar in it, right? So we really got to get to a point where we start to address that first level, love on those babies, because they're going to set the bar. And then we'll stop glorifying this garbage, glorifying ignorance. That's what has to happen. But that's not going to happen until parental guidance becomes a community responsibility. Not just the parents in the household, a community responsibility of how do we guide these young people. And when we love on those babies, they'll set the standards, and then you'll see more individuals start to gravitate to want to be doctors and lawyers and professionals, readers and thinkers and doers, as opposed to engulfing in this garbage that they see on a regular basis. But the truth of the matter is, if you stay around cigarette smoke all day long, you're going to smell like cigarettes. And that's what's happening to our young people. They're around this garbage all day. It's in their schools. I work in the schools, so I see it. It's in the schools, it's in the homes, it's in the community. So there's nothing positive that they're able to really put their fingers on. And that's the reason why they're doing a lot of these things, because it's what they're experiencing. This is what they see on a regular basis. So that's what the issue is. And that's why them dying is not a big thing, because guess what? It's expected. It's expected.
Dr. Evans, for those who survive gun violence, I'm talking about those who have been shot, those who have been wounded and survived. What has been your experience with those who have survived? Do you know whether or not they've had a change of heart, even though they may be going back to those same kind of communities, or what impact might that near-death experience have?
I think you basically are talking about two different individuals. So unfortunately, we're in a society where many innocent bystanders get shot.
Yes.
Right? So if you're talking about the person who was either in the car, we had unfortunately some individuals shot up an area where there was a park, and we had several individuals come in from that. No one died. No one that came here at least died from those, but they were shot in so many different areas. And so, that's going to impact them significantly for their lifetime. And yes, we have at Howard, we have a violence intervention team, and it literally talks to everyone that has any sort of violence, whether it be gunshot wound or stab wound or even assault in some cases, and reaches out to them and tries to see, what aspects of their life or their community or things that they can change to help things better. Those are the people that receive that. And usually they try to listen to that advice and make the changes that can be made. I mean, some things that can't be made, you can't move, but maybe there's there's something in a security aspect or an awareness aspect that you can be taught about. But then there's the other individuals who either perpetuated or was a part of the gun violence, so they had a gun and so forth. And many, when it's known that they are a participant, most of the time the police are here, and so many times that they are then arrested and they have to go through that process. So again, another aspect of just destroying their lives, because now they don't have death. They don't have injuries, or they may or may not have an injury that's going to last, but now they're in the system permanently, and that's going to impact them significantly over their lifetime. So again, you have another group of individuals that, they're really on this trajectory now that's going down, and that's impacting not just them, but their community. So whoever they were taking care of, whatever aspirations they had, those are now down the drain. You can't go to law school. You can't go to, barely can go to engineering, maybe, after these things. There's so many things that are going to look at. I get asked every 2 years when I check out the box, have I had a criminal record when I go to recertify or re-credential at this hospital and every hospital. So it's something that is going to impact you forever. So there's that. And are they learning? Yes, we reach out to them too, but it's obviously harder if they're in the system. But are they learning to change? Yes, some are, but the majority of them are so locked in that many of them even refuse to receive any help. So again, you have to separate it to the pure victim to the ones who are sort of in that lifestyle and whether or not they receive it. I would say maybe 20% of the time, and based on what I've seen here, versus 60, 70, 80% of the time where there's innocent bystanders, as it were.
Yeah, because Dr. Majid, one of the reasons why I was asking, that question, and I'll put it to you too. Years ago, when I was in television, I interviewed a young artist in Baltimore here, where I live, and he had never spent any time. He was a drug dealer, a former drug dealer. When I interviewed him about his art, and he said he had never been shot, never been arrested, but when his competitors in urban pharmaceutical sales decided that they were going to involve themselves in what we would consider a hostile takeover and put 3 guns to his head, both ears and his mouth, and threatened him. He said that was enough for me. And he retired from the business in his late 20s. He's still alive, thriving art business, and an influencer in the community here. And so I guess, my question is, for those who may have been shot and survived, do you have any feeling as to whether or not they say, yeah, I don't want to go through that again, and decide to do something else, turn around?
So I'm gonna tell you some two actual stories. There's an individual from 2018 to 2021 who was shot every year. Okay, every year. Think about that, right? In 2021, he was shot twice. Okay, this is an individual. There's also an individual that I know that was shot one time, and completely, that was it. And this individual was in the streets. This was not someone who was from the suburbs who had the 2-car garage, even though they can be a part of this as well. However, This was an individual that was in the trenches. One time, change. 2018, every year, 2 times, 1 year, did not change. The difference is the value system. And this is what goes back. And this is what we do at YAME. This is what we're doing in the community, right? We're not teaching a lot about gun violence and, what you should and shouldn't do. We do that, of course, right? But we really teach is value. Because when a young person understands what their value is, they will change the decisions that they make. They will change the individuals that they're around. And even as like Dr. Evans said earlier, a lot of the times they have to go back into that community. This is a financial problem that we talk about as well. We don't have time to talk about that right now, but the truth of the matter is if I get shot, Dr. Evans, he patches me up, I'm going right back to the same community. But if I go back with the same value system, I'm coming right back to see him, right? Most likely. And hopefully I get to see him, right? But if that individual if they change their value system, then trust me, they're not going to want to be back in there. So that same artist that you're talking about, I guarantee you, not a lot changed in his financial situation immediately. But what happened was his value system changed. What was important to him? So when your value system changes, you will find ways to not be a victim of your own circumstance, should I say, right? And I believe that's what happens with a lot of our young people. We do talk a lot about the bad things that are happening because unfortunately, a lot of times, the great things are not really newsworthy. But there are so many individuals who are searching and looking to create their community right now, right? They just need some help. We need to help to build that bridge. But they find value and they find other things to do. And you're starting to see that. It's not something that's being publicized as much, but a lot of our young people are looking like, where can we go to find some other things? We just had a group real quick uptown. And when we went there to talk to the young people, the first day, these young people, they were just like, basically, get out of our face. We do not want it. We kept coming back. Around about the fourth time coming back, it was one guy, that leader, first tier, as we were talking about earlier, and he said, man, I really don't want to be around here, but where am I going to go? So we talked to him about a couple of options and things like that. Before the end of the day, before we had dinner, I can't even count how many of the young people, the ones that act like they didn't want us to be there. Look, if you can really help him out, like, can you help us out? They want to go to Job Corps. Can we go to Job Corps in a different city? Can we do? They're looking for a way out. We're not providing that.
Yeah.
We're not
Let me ask this, and this is really important. And I only have like 2 minutes, but I need answers from both of you. Dr. Evans, you see this every day, and you were in the active military. What are you doing to make sure that you're okay?
Personally?
Yes.
Well, I mean, awareness is the biggest helper. I think acknowledging, the surroundings of where you are and understanding that you can't take things for granted. But at the end of the day, also, I position myself. I play, in places and do things that allow me to personify or continue to implement change. And if I'm implementing change around me, then hopefully that continually picks up. I don't know. I'm new to DC, unfortunately, relatively about 1.5 years now, and I honestly love the city. I love this. What I see here is to me, it's a beautiful place. I came to Howard specifically because of the history. I went to a historical Black college for my undergrad, just not Howard.
Where?
Oakwood College in Huntsville, Alabama.
Huntsville, Alabama. We can talk about that. And I don't have a lot of time because I wanted to get that same kind of final reaction from Dr. Majid. But my question is, I just want to make sure that even in the work that you're doing, that you are okay.
Yeah, and I am. I feel, I'm rooted in the church. I have a good foundation. I have a good family, and so those are things that kind of give you that basis. I, like many others, kind of grew up without my father always around, but I had a group of individuals and a group of friends that kind of helped steer me. I was like any other, very much exposed to guns and things like that. Yeah. I just chose to I made different choices. I chose to not go with a friend that had guns all the time, running guns. I chose. So yeah, that's why it's about making choices. Even now, you make certain choices that put you in a better position.
Dr. Majid, I'll give you the last 30 seconds. You've been doing this for a while. How are you making sure that you're okay? Real quick.
For me, it's just my faith. My faith is so strong. I focus on my family. Like I said, I have a son, I have a daughter. My value system is really strong, and that's what really keeps me going. And my last little couple of seconds, I just want to tell everybody, especially our parents, guns are becoming the new crack in our community, and I want you to be very, very careful. And I want you to go through your kids' phones. I want you to be as nosy as possible, and I want you to love on your babies because they need us. Because they are putting guns in our community as a new crack, and they're going to put us in a position where we're not going to be able to achieve the greatness that your babies are supposed to. So please do that.
Thank you both so much. I wish we had more time. I'll certainly have you both back as always. It's just a great conversation and an important one. That is the Daily Drum for this Monday, April 14th. I'm Harold Fisher.